Hey guys, I know I went like 4 months without posting to this channel, and now this is my third video in 2 days, but I just can't hold this in anymore. I'm here with Indy. Okay. Thanks, buddy. So last night I finished reading Playground by Richard Powers, and I'm exhausted this morning because after I finished reading it, I couldn't sleep because I couldn't decide if I liked or virulently hated this book. And I was talking about it a bit with friends today, and I've decided I'm going to come on here and talk to you about it too. And this review, I'm actually going to give a 2-level spoiler warning. So first, I'm going to tell you what the book is about with no spoilers. And then I'm going to do a mild spoiler. And then we're going to go no holds barred, spoiled as all heck. So I'll give plenty of warning before each step. Okay. Oh, and the first thing I'm going to mention is that when I mention it to my friends, one of them went and Googled the book just to see what the heck I was talking about. And the first result was a Goodreads review that spoiled everything with no warning. So do not Google it if you don't want to be spoiled. So this is Playground came out, I think, last year from Richard Powers, who previously won a Pulitzer for his book Understory, which I did not read. This one just happened to pop up on my Audible recommendations. And I had a bunch of credits to use. I'm canceling because fuck Amazon. But I have a bunch of credits left to use. So figured I'd grab that. I didn't know anything about it. Okay, so actually I'm going to start by just reading one of my other friends in the group chat sent me this. I'm going to read you the AI overview that Google gives when she Googled this, if I can. Oh, I'm going to have to edit it in after this. Okay, here's the AI overview my friend Alicia sent me. Playground, published in 2024 by Richard Powers, is a novel that explores the significance and power of play. The Pulitzer Prize-winning author of The Overstory, Powers delves into the circuits that enable large language models. The book received mostly positive reviews and was longlisted for the 2024 Booker Prize. Some say that Powers' writing inspires awe and that The Overstory helped people see trees differently. Why would they say that about? Okay, so yeah, that'll become funny later, funnier later, because this book does involve AI. It is ostensibly about 3 friends. First, it's Todd, who is a rich white kid from Chicago. He goes to a prep school where he meets Rafi, who's a poor black kid who's there on scholarship. And the two of them eventually meet Ina, who is a Pacific Islander girl. So they meet her in college, and they all become friends, and Ina and Rafi start dating. And then you kind of follow their lives. Ina is an artist, Rafi is a writer, and Todd he becomes like this programmer guy who gets interested in AI and in building an AI. And the novel is narrated from each of their different perspectives, and as well as the perspective of a scuba diver, marine biologist named Evie. Evie, who is pretty clearly based on Sylvia Earle, even though Sylvia Earle shows up in the novel. And so each of these 4 characters, the story is told in part kind of from their perspective. In the audiobook, which is what I listened to, I picked this up because I had a credit. In the audiobook, there are different narrators. So, and you follow their lives and their stories into old age. So that's a spoiler-free overview of the plot. And for a spoiler-free review, I didn't love this book, in part because, it was compelling enough to keep me reading, but the characters were very one-dimensional, particularly Rafi and Ina. The two white characters had a lot more depth to them. But the two people of color were very sketched out and underdeveloped. And at times their treatment was cringy and clearly came from the perspective of a white man writing about them. There were also very basic mistakes. Evie is an experienced scuba diver who early on, she's described diving, and she has a dive buddy, and he is checking to make sure she's okay, and she gives him a thumbs up. This is a really obvious mistake. Anyone who knows anything about scuba diving knows that thumbs up means I have to go up to the surface. You have to say okay, generally. And so that was pretty early on, and I was like, did this guy even bother doing his research? Weird. And so because of that, it wasn't very enjoyable to read. There are things later on, that kept me interested and kept me reading. And ultimately, I'm still not totally sure how I feel about all this. Okay. So that is the end of phase 1, spoiler free. I am about to move on to phase 2, initial spoiler. Okay. There's a twist. This twist could explain why the characters are one-dimensional and there are really basic mistakes in the book. You get to this twist and near the end. There are some hints dropped along the way, but it is eventually made clear in the closing chapter, maybe chapters, last few chapters. And I put that behind a spoiler alert because sometimes if you know there's a twist coming, if I know there's a twist coming, I'm more likely to spot it. And that can kind of remove my enjoyment. So that's why I put that one behind a warning. Okay, so the next section, we're going to go fully, guns out. Sorry, I'm exhausted. I really didn't sleep last night. Not just because of that, because of, everything. So I'm going to just talk about the book as a whole and not hold anything back. So turn this off now if you would like to read this book, which I would not recommend. If this book were shorter, if it were a novella, I'd recommend this book. But it's too long, and I wonder if my time was wasted. Okay. Here's the big spoiler. The big spoiler, at some point you've come to realize that Todd's portion is being narrated. His portion is always in the first person. He's talking to you, the reader, and you, the reader, are the AI. He's talking to his AI that he has developed. And he's describing his life and the life of his friends and the life of this marine biologist, because all of these people are very important to him. And he is dying of, this isn't a spoiler, this is made clear early on, but he has dementia, Lewy body dementia, I think that's what it's called. And he's dying and he knows it, and he has some regrets. And there's this kind of subplot about how Rafi is kind of obsessed with this idea of immortality, and how humanity is maybe evolving to become immortal. And Todd becomes obsessed with the use of technology to do that and the use of AI to do that. So early on, I was like, oh, okay, is Todd going to invent an AI that, like, you know, you can upload yourself like Mickey 7, you know, where you can upload your whole being, you know, that type of, you know, technocratic idea of immortality, where you upload yourself to the cloud and live forever. And maybe he's done this, you know. And there's a lot of like, so, okay, and I'll just get to the spoiler is that no, he does not do that. He invents an AI to tell him what I'm just gonna take this from a Redditor I saw, because I found this thread after I finished the book. Somebody called it a dead time story. He invented an AI to tell him a dead time story about how right before he dies, he and all of his friends are reunited on a tropical island where they forgive each other, and he dies and gives them all of his billions of dollars. And so, in fact, Rafi died in a tenement in Chicago years prior. And he and Ina broke up. Like, the story that you read in the book is that Rafi and Ina do cut off contact with Todd for betraying Rafi by telling Ina about Rafi's past. And they cut off all contact with him and moved to this tropical island where they adopt 2 children and live this wonderful life together. And but that didn't actually happen. It turns out that Rafi died of a heart attack in a tenement in Chicago. They really did break up after Todd, you know, Rafi didn't just cut Todd out, he cut Todd and Ina out. And when Rafi died, he left all of his money to Ina. The only money he had left, he had because he threatened to sue Todd, because Todd made his millions off of an idea that Rafi gave him. And so Todd paid him out, and then Rafi just kept that money to give to Ina when he died. And then the Sylvia Earle character, the reason why she was important to him was because she wrote a children's book about how beautiful the ocean was, and it inspired Todd as a child. And she died scuba diving or something in her 70s. But she was on the island too, in the dead time story. Everybody was there. It was great. So this brings me to my issue. Because I spent an entire novel reading this kind of cringy white guy's idea of what an inner city black kid is thinking and doing, and why he would cut out his white best friend from his life. Because he caught his white best friend telling, like, in his apartment, telling his girlfriend why he was angry at her. It made no sense. A lot of it just made no sense. So there are 2 things to take from this. Number one is that the author is a bad author, that he sucks, and is using this cover of an AI to kind of, let's just say this, he sucks. Let's say this AI really is great, that it really did examine all of these documents. Like, Todd talks about feeding it all, like everything Rafi's ever written, everything he can find about Rafi online, everything Rafi ever told him about his life. And this is the 3rd iteration of this superpowered AI that is going to take over the world, you know, according to Todd. And it just sucks this bad. So that's either bad writing or, you know, here's the other. So at that point, the book is bad and throw it away. Okay. But we're going to set that aside because this guy won a Pulitzer Prize for his previous novel. I haven't read anything else from him. I'm looking down at notes, by the way. I made notes just to make sure I hit everything here. So let's assume that the author is a good writer because he's not a bad writer. Like, it kept me interested, you know? Okay. So now if we assume the writing is good, then we have to also assume that Todd is an unreliable narrator, that when he says this third generation AI is this all powerful, incredible, near sentient machine, Todd is a fucking moron. Because like the AI, like the thumbs up mistake is, so we assume the author put that in on purpose because we're assuming the author did do his research. So the author put that mistake in on purpose to tip us off that the AI sucks. Like, because if it's not all powerful, but if a marginally well-designed AI was making up a story about a woman who has been scuba diving her entire life, then it would not make that mistake. And Todd mentions that, you know, the first generation of the AI would hallucinate, would make things up that were wrong, but not this one. So we have to assume that Todd is a moron, and his AI is also a moron. Because it also thinks that inner city Black kids talk like, it's like he learned how they talked from 80s sitcoms, you know? It also means that, so now we know that Todd is an idiot and that the AI is bad. And so we also know that the input he put in about his friends to lead to such a one-dimensional picture of both Rafi and Ina, we also have to assume then that Todd never understood his friends at all. Which is kind of like what Todd says Rafi says to him or thinks about him, that his white rich friend never really understood what it was like to be a poor Black kid, you know, even though they were best friends for all this time and they talked about everything. Oh, and I should also mention, like, by the end, you know, you're rooting for Todd. Like, Todd is dying and you feel bad for him. And he genuinely seems like he wants to make amends, you know, for this horrible thing of telling Ina about Rafi's childhood in the hopes of helping her better understand him. This terrible thing. And so now, like, in that light, you're starting to come to the realization that Todd is an absolute monster who never understood his friends, who tokenized his friends, and then passed that tokenization on to his AI, which is just a chatbot. So now that we know that Todd is a bad person, despite the entire novel trying to making him the most three-dimensional character who we empathize with, that brings us back to the thing that doesn't make sense about this very tight friend group breaking up over, again, Todd telling Ina that about Rafi's childhood. By the way, look at this guy. Like, he's got his little paw on my foot. I love this guy. So obviously, like, that must not have happened because, again, we're assuming that Richard Powers is a good writer, and a good writer just wouldn't write that. And this good writer has now given us hints that Todd sucks ass. So the only conclusion I can draw is that, in fact, Todd and Ina fucked. Like, why else would these three people all go their separate ways after being such a tight friend group? And there are hints to this, like Todd says he had a crush on Ina, that he was like in love with her and he never pursued anyone else. But from his account, he never makes a play for Ina at all. All that happens is she comes over to his apartment, upset after a fight with Rafi, and he explains Rafi's background and then lets her stay over in his bed while he sleeps on the couch. That's just what he's telling the AI. He's actually an asshole who slept with his best friend's girlfriend, who his best friend was sure that he was going to marry. And also, we're meant to think, so the reason why Evie, the Sylvia Earle character, is in the story is because this book she wrote had such an impact on Todd, but none of that impact shows in Todd's story at all, except for the fact that he's making up all of this. He's having his AI make up this story about these adventures that she goes on. Oh, and by the way, those are I found those extremely annoying too. Evie is the first woman on an all-woman underwater research team, and they're better than all the men. Nobody thought they could do it, but there's never any fights. They're perfect. They work together as a well-oiled machine, etc. It's very like Mary Sue. And so, yeah, that's why Evie's even in this. But all Todd did was he grew up to be Mark Zuckerberg, like where's the love for the environment that he seems to think that Evie gave him? And at the end, he's talking about how great his AI is and thinking about how it's kind of worth it to have, because AI, he mentions specifically, AI is horrifically destructive to the environment, but it's worth it because this is humanity's next evolution. But this AI sucks. Like, this AI clearly sucks, which, we find out at the end. And on the Evie point, the story that Todd had, like Todd's AI, based on the information that Todd gave the AI, and I guess maybe stuff he found on the internet, whatever. But for some reason, this is I'm still kind of baffled by this choice. But Richard, Todd, and or the AI decided to throw in the fact that Sylvia had 2 kids and was a shit mom. Her kids fucking hate her. And that, why? Why did we put that in there? And maybe I literally just finished it last night, went to bed, woke up this morning, waited to wake up enough to make this video, and now I'm making them. So maybe I'll think on it some more and be like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense. But it's especially kind of mean-spirited when it's so obvious that she's based on Sylvia Earle, who does have children. It's like you just threw in that she was a terrible mother. What an asshole. So yeah, in the end, and I'm spelling this all out very frankly. If you haven't read the book, it took me a minute because the book ends with this rousing, lovey-dovey, we're all together again and made up, and the environment is, all this money is going to go to protecting the environment, all of Todd's money and Rafi's money that he sued Todd to get. It's all going to go to protecting the environment. But then you're wait, but the environment that is his AI, you just mentioned his AI had environmental impacts. There's no deep dive on that. There's no interesting points where in the story where Todd wrestles with the fact that AI is energy inefficient. None at all. Like, that's literally like just a throwaway line in the last chapter. So I don't know. I feel like again, we're assuming that Richard Powers is a good author, but I feel like to get that message, if that is the message he was going for, I feel like there are better ways to have made it clear, like better breadcrumbs to have left if you wanted that story to be impactful, as opposed to being something that like later on somebody might be like, wait, is that what he meant? So yeah, and then like, so at the end of the day, here's what's happened is that you have spent, like I just spent hours of my life reading what this good author purposely put down as a kind of shitty AI story. Like with one-dimensional characters and basic mistakes. And then to be like, gotcha, it was on purpose. Okay. And then is the takeaway like, oh yeah, you should be angry because AI should not be writing art because it's ultimately shallow and worthless. Okay, I already knew that. I didn't need to waste hours of my life reading a story written by an AI to get that moral. So yeah, a little left kind of a bad taste in my mouth. And I think that's all of my major points. Either this is just a badly written book or it's a purposely badly written book. There's this thing in my head. I always think of it as pulling an Eggers, because many, many years ago, I read a heartbreaking work of staggering genius, and I hated it for a very similar reason, if not the exact same reason. Every other page, it seemed, was written with the author, like the narrator, saying like, oh, I know I'm going on too long. I know I'm being too sentimental. I know this was a terrible metaphor. I know blah, blah, blah. And it's basically, it's like, okay, so you know you're writing badly. And by admitting it, you think that makes it better because people will be like, oh, he's just a human. But I would rather just have you write better. So yeah, that's my full review. If you've read this book, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Oh, and just not to put too fine a point on it, but Evie, the Sylvia Earle character, who's a French Canadian, is the second most three-dimensional character after Todd. But she is also a product of the AI. So why are Rafi and Ina so one-dimensional? And every character on the island that they go to. But the two white characters aren't. Maybe I'm being nitpicky at that point. Maybe Evie was also badly done. I mean, like I said, the all women research team was amazing. Like that. Okay, that was pretty dumb and one-dimensional, but still, like, she had an interesting marriage to a guy that actually I found a little touching, their marriage, despite the fact that her children fucking hate her. Why? Okay. All right. I'm going to end it there. Let me know if you read this. I'd like to know your thoughts. And I know I have a lot of other book reviews to catch up on another time. Okay. Bye.